Okay, we're streaming live on Facebook. I'll put this up on YouTube. Hello, everyone. I want to speak about some of the transits that are happening now, specifically Vesta squaring the nodal axis. So whenever there's a planet, especially a slower moving body that squares the nodes, it's a very potent and essentialized theme emerging time. For some review, Vesta has been in Virgo for quite some time. She went retrograde several months ago, and actually I think first reached the retrograde shadow in November of 2020. So basically from November up until sometime this summer, Vesta is in this window that she's been moving back and forth in for, I guess, well over half a year. And what's interesting is during this time, she's been pretty much squaring the nodes the entire time. This square, which is coming up this month, will be the final of 3 squares. So I'm going to share my chart and speak about what this is, tuning into the Vesta archetype and applying this in Virgo, squaring the Gemini nodal axis with Sag. And it's also meaningful to note that this Vesta will be heavily involved in the upcoming eclipse season, which will be in the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. And Jupiter will be there as well. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay. So here we are right now. Vesta is at 8 degrees. It was just a couple of weeks ago that Vesta actually just went direct at 6 degrees Virgo. So Vesta has been gaining some speed, gaining momentum. And you can see here, I've taken out the aspects because I tend to, the lines, because it just often is just too much visual material for me. But you can see that there's a natural square between Virgo and Gemini, and Virgo and Sagittarius. All the mutable signs share a square. So as Vesta moves to 10 degrees, let's take a look. And actually, you know what let me do? Let me actually just program in the lines, because I feel like it's pretty helpful for most people to see the lines. I'm going to keep in just the squares. There we go. Okay. So this just depicts the square so we can more easily track the reality of Vesta squaring the nodes. Let's animate this. All right, so we can see on May 23rd, Vesta will be exact. So we're seeing an energetic that's building, that's growing for the next couple months. And just let's look at this. See the moon right here? Just a few days after, not even a few days, like 2.5 days after Vesta exacts, locks on the nodes, we have a full moon happening on the nodes. It's actually more like 2 days. And this full moon happening on the nodes is an eclipse. Whenever the new moon or the full moon happens on the nodal axis, that's always going to be an eclipse. And in this case, I always got to think about it. Full moon means the Earth's shadow is on the moon. So the sun is casting a shadow. So this is a lunar eclipse. And this lunar eclipse is happening on the south node. So there's a lot of potency. And by that time, Jupiter will be in Pisces, and Jupiter, Pisces squares Gemini Sag axis. Okay, so there are a lot of really meaningful pieces to speak to here. I'm going to close my eyes and come into an attunement and share. Okay, so let's look at just Vesta. More or less May 23rd. In fact, let me close the screen. I'll just talk to you about these archetypes and we'll look back at the chart. One of the benefits of me doing these videos live is that it's just, you're all in. The perfectionist in me just has to accept it, which is a really good practice and actually a really good key in to what Virgo is all about, and Vesta in Virgo. So let's just start with understanding Vesta. Adam Ginsberg has described this beautifully, and I always draw upon this way of thinking. If all the walls are falling down, Vesta is where we're keeping the posts up. It's that point of devotion, of sacred service. And internally, it lands as this is where we are to perform our holy function. And the idea of a holy function is where there's a purification through our service. We show up, we give ourselves to the work. And in this single pointed devotion, there's an attunement to keeping an awareness of the eternal, keeping an awareness of the sacred in our hearts, in our minds all the time. It's like doing the dishes and seeing that doing the dishes is a devotional act, like cleaning the plates, cleaning the kitchen. This is all just a practice of cleaning the mind, keeping our inner space clear. It's setting your room, your office in order and creating a clear environment to do the work that you're here to do. Virgo, in some sense, you can say is the things that we do in order to do the things that we do. It's very basic. It's very essential. And naturally, Vesta has a correlation with Virgo. Many people actually consider Vesta to be the ruler of Virgo. I don't know about rulership. For me, just there's a natural connection. There's a resonance in Virgo with the Vesta archetype. And it lands very authentically for me to think of the two as just sort of the same essence. So with Vesta, we are attuning to this devotional aspect of life through something very practical. In very tangible ways, Vesta shows up in our chart simply where there's a calling to show up and to do the work. And in doing this work, we're going to develop a proficiency and a skillfulness and a mastery in it via our continual commitment, via our continual rededication and devotion. Just think of the Vesta archetype. It's the flame that you keep lit in the temple. It's that place in your home that's always lit. It's where you are always referencing that which is eternally holy and pure and sacred. And to think of the potency of the Vesta archetype within the collective. Things happen all the time. Things break. All kinds of horrible things happen and challenges arise. Often there are setbacks in our life. And I feel very tangibly the Vesta archetype is where we all learn to attune to stay on course. Staying on course might not mean I'm going to do this specific thing no matter what. It's staying on course with our devotion, with our internal attunement to what is truly worthy, what is truly sacred and important. And that even if things change, we start again, right? Things fall apart, we start again. We made a mistake, we start again. And that capacity to start again is so essential to this devotion. Now, when we have Vesta square in the nodes, we're going to often find dynamics or issues. I mean, there are many layers to unpack with Vesta square in the nodes, and I'm not going to touch upon all of them, but one of them can be that fundamental relationship to showing up for our work. And since this is the final of 3 squares, we can really say that over the past several months since last year, and the first square happened this year, and then it quickly went retrograde and squared again. But again, it's been in this window since November or so. That there is now the possibility of integrating a deeper awareness, a deeper understanding of rededication or redevotion. So let's unpack what this means in Virgo and what this rededication, what this redevotion quality is here. When I was tuning into this, the lyrics for Leonard Cohen's song came to mind, Anthem. Forget your perfect offerings. Just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. An analogy for this Virgo square to the Gemini and Sagittarius axis is you're in school and you have a test tomorrow and you're studying for the test and you tell yourself, oh, I get it. And you skip over some details and you decide that you got the idea, you got the general meaning, and then you're at the test and you have to do things. You have to answer questions that you're not prepared to answer. There's data, there's information There are things that you didn't practice or study or read about that you don't actually know. And that you actually can't draw upon a more generalized, oh, I get it, I see how it all works. You actually needed to show up and be prepared. And so this can lead to a sense of the temple's been desecrated. I failed the test. I didn't perform my function. I didn't prepare myself adequately, and I don't know what I'm supposed to know. This says start over again. Take the test again. Or whatever's next, start with where you are. And there's always a teaching for everyone. And this is really embodied in the Virgo-Pisces axis. And we're going to see very soon, as Vesta passes this square, it's going to return to an opposition with Neptune. So this teaching is going to be very present for us throughout the summer. We might feel that, I'm too lost to the cause, or I'm already so far behind, or I didn't adequately try, didn't prepare well enough. The teaching of forgiveness is we're only responsible to start now and do the best that we can. And spirit, love, this greater intelligence that holds all of the pieces, knows how to make everything work out. And it actually has this way of making it as if there was never a problem to begin with. It doesn't matter how many mistakes we've made or how much we've forgotten, how much we've neglected, where we've avoided, where we've neglected, where we've denied our work, where we've been lazy, where we've just kind of ignored what was necessary in our life, in our relationships, in our work, in our health. There's this quality of forgiveness where when we really bring our minds back to this humble, let me start now, we don't undo the past in terms of we can still remember it. It still happened. But it no longer sticks to us. And there's this way that only love can do it. That the purity and the effectiveness, the potency, the efficiency, the effect of what we do almost becomes stronger, as if there is never any mistake. There's actually a teaching in A Course in Miracles this reminds me of. It goes something like, this is not an exact quote, so I don't remember. Maybe if Michelle, if you're watching, you can text it to me and let me know. I bet you know exactly what I'm going to say too. A current love where there was a present hate, a present love where there was a past hate is the strongest miracle of all. Right? To come back on track, to return to ourselves, to return to our course, where we had otherwise given up, where we had otherwise not been present. It's not just returning and starting again. There's something there that is special. There's something that's brought into that space that I think is even more healing because of what we're exemplifying in our forgiveness, what we are demonstrating in our willingness to say, I'm not perfect. I didn't do this right. There are lessons for me here. I'm going to start again right now. There's a teaching in that is so much greater than just the starting again. It's the teaching of compassion. And that allows us to look at our lives and look at other people and to see the imperfections of the world, to see where things are off course, and to understand all we ever can do is start where we are, which teaches us the value of the present moment. It teaches us how important and how worth it the present moment is. So you can think of Vesta and Virgo coming into this square is, okay, coming back to the temple. Maybe there are a lot of details. It's felt messy. We've tried to rush through. An issue with Virgo can be, I just want to get it done. I want to fix it. I want to not have to deal with the minutia, with the details of my life. And that usually will create some kind of crisis. Details that are neglected will result in, at some point, some kind of crisis situation, which then by necessity becomes a mechanism for consciousness to go back and deal with what has been neglected. And again, this can really induce this sense of, oh, I don't want to have to do all that. It's like going to a garden and seeing all the weeds. But really, it's just one weed at a time. And if you're efficient, you won't just pull the weed out so it looks like it's all clean, right? It's like not really doing the work, but just creating a superficial, it looks good, okay, I'm done. But there's a dishonesty in that. The roots are still there, but to actually take your time and dig up the roots, and you might actually find that all the weeds that you see are connected to a singular root. There's a momentum that's created as we cultivate a joyful slowness to do what's necessary, even if it's repetitive. I find on my own journey continuously this amazing purification as I bring my attention more and more to the simple things. Whatever it is, Virgo is very multifaceted. The Virgo dimension can direct itself and can relate to our relationships, our body, our service in the world, our routines. In totality, it's all the things that we got to do to function here in order to fulfill our evolutionary function. It's mutable earth. What are the things that are in our sphere? What are the people, places, things, purposes, experiences, websites, jobs, techniques, skills, responsibilities that are in our sphere to be working on? Everything requires maintenance. Everything requires grooming. Everything points to the possibility of ongoing self-refinement. Adam Gainsbourg actually once described Virgo as cultivating self-accuracy, and I just love it. Accuracy. You can never get so good at it. You're never going to, with Vesta and Virgo, you're never going to clean the temple floor and light the candle and make it just right, just perfect, because it's not about that. Is the candle still lit? Are we doing our work? Are we coming back? That's all that's important. We can really just, Jeff Green has often said with Virgo, that the value is in the effort. So we just do what we can and we let go of the rest. There's so much healing and wisdom in that. So as Vesta comes into the square, this theme is very heightened. So there's an invitation for all of us to just connect with what is in front of us to do. Like for me, there's a lot of website stuff, organizational stuff, all these different courses and classes that I'm teaching, and managing that with all these different dimensions in my life, and just everything for me. And this particular Virgo square is actually, I have a Gemini Sagittarius nodal axis. So this particular Vesta for me, because of my nodes, it's just very activating. But this is happening for everyone, and it's going to manifest for all of us in our charts relative to however it's relevant for us. What are the things that we're doing? Where are we going to gather more information, more data? Where is there more to learn? And this Mercury retrograde, so let's bring up the chart again. Mercury's in Gemini. It's going to be in Gemini for quite some time. Going to go retrograde in the 20-something degrees. So Mercury is going to be ruling this node and will hang out there. Actually, right here, May 23rd, when it exacts a square, just before this lunar eclipse. It's also just a little bit before Mercury goes retrograde. Mercury stations retrograde on the 30th of May. So we can see that we're also in this period where there's a lot of information, new perspective. Mercury retrograde really speaks to this simple truth that there's always more to know. And the patterning of our thinking will tend to keep our perception of life in a very narrow place. So ask different questions, be open to different insight, different perspectives. Connect with the questions that feel really, really useful and relevant, that sort of open a spaciousness for where there can be things to do and things to learn, perspectives to have that might really support you in whatever it is you're needing to do. There's a lot of learning and a lot of forward movement in these transits. And Michelle has indeed come back. This quote that I referred to from A Course in Miracles, chapter 26. The holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. The holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. And let's jam with that and say, the holy place on earth is where an ancient neglect has become a present devotion. An ancient denial has become a present starting over again. actually, these are all the same thing. It's returning to the truth. It's returning to love, which is this present moment, which is an acceptance of this must be okay. An issue with Virgo is oftentimes it's our sense of, oh, there's so many weeds. We're so far from where we want to be. We're so lost to the cause. That yields a perception of just, why bother? I already got too many cavities. Why brush my teeth? I'm already so lost. Why even bother? Or I've already made too many mistakes. Why try again? We can really feel into that and think about that in our own lives. Just the ways we might create intellectually nice sounding excuses for why not to do simply what we're here to do. So yeah, I love that quote. It's so powerful. I actually, I want to see that quote. I want to visually see it and think about it a lot. It feels so important. So let's look at some other pieces of this time period. As I mentioned, after Vesta passes the square to the nodes, it's going to be moving towards Neptune. And let me just show you that. Let's progress this by weeks. I'm curious, when does it actually... Yeah, so Neptune goes retrograde during this time. And, sometime looks like early July. Yeah. Neptune and Vesta square each other. It's just good to have that in awareness. It's really bringing that Virgo-Pisces axis in really strongly. So there are a couple pieces that I want to speak to. So thinking about this Vesta in context with this lunar eclipse. Okay, this is May 26th. I'll definitely, bring out more teachings on this eclipse as we get towards that time, but a part of what this speaks to, and this, we can kind of call this the container of May. Two things, the effects of our work. Gemini Sag it's transmigration. It's like ideas spread. They go all over the place and they communicate ideas and insight and perspectives, which then adds to our collective understanding and comprehension of the truth. So there's a calling to expand, to transmit, to communicate, to do our work. And I think this will really free up a lot of energy. One was so that freeing up of energy and moving of a lot of ideas is a part of it. And the other is where there is too much ideology. This is how I'm supposed to do it. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is the way I'm supposed to live my life. This is the right answer. Or this is what I'm supposed to do as a teacher, healer, guide, relationship person, parent, or a person who's cleaning their house. Like any rigid ideas about the right way, this would be loosening that. So we can see that itself happening in two ways. One, a sense of, I don't know how to do this. Right? There's too much on our plate, feeling overwhelmed by it. And the invitation here would really be to let go of the grasp. And I would say it's letting go of our answers. Where there are answers, there isn't space for learning. And relative to that Virgo dynamic, it's like where there are answers, we're going to be doing the same things over and over again. And it's not functional. It's like, makes me think about the standard American diet. And you hear all these teachings from, just the mainstream world about the right way to eat. And maybe for many people, that is the right way. But imagine someone who's following that and they've convinced themselves that the basic, mainstream dietary recommendations are the best way and the right way, but it's not working for them. There has to be a willingness to just let go of the grasp of, but this is how it's supposed to be, right? And then the other dynamic is if we are letting go, this can really reflect so much synchronicity, a lot of new information that particularly opens the door for all the things that we're really called to do. So it's simultaneously, don't procrastinate, do your work, show up, but see where there's rigidity, because life wants to make us useful. Life wants to use our body, our mind, our skills, our capacities in a way that is far more relevant and useful and effective than even what we can think of on our own. So there's a need here to just sort of loosen the grip. So there can be a reorganization that occurs, and it can feel very disorganizing, can feel very unsettling, where the need to hold on to a map, like, oh, I need to know how this is all going to work out, or how am I going to be able to understand all the details? It's a very masterful and potentially beautiful and just fascinating and interesting kind of period of time that's building throughout the rest of this month. And as Jupiter enters Pisces, it really does emphasize the need here to let go and surrender. Trust your intuition, trust your feeling. There's a point in life where we all have to acknowledge the truth of reality really is so much deeper than what we tend to think of it day to day. And we have glimpses of it. And then we might forget for a few days or for a few weeks or for a few years. And then we come back and like, oh, it's always been here, this greater truth, this deeper meaning. And I feel a part of the spiritual journey is just bringing this remembering into the moment-to-moment experiences of our life. Learning to apply our faith, our trust in more moments. So we ultimately can come to the understanding that there's no situation or moment or place experience that is less divine or more divine than any other. And where we fall into a futility or this incessant need to find the answers, it really reflects where there's an invitation. And as I'm speaking these words, oh, it's so useful for me. I mean, it's so alive for me on my journey. So I feel a sense of whatever I'm about to say, I want to hear it. Where we find ourselves seeking and looking for an answer and wanting certainty. If we can just catch that, I often think of it as grabbing the tiger by the tail. It can become a pivot to reconnect with a deeper trust and thus a more direct relationship to the intelligence of life that wants to guide us, to the will of love. But it's necessary to catch our frenetic energy first and to be willing to just say, okay, I'm here. I'm not trusting. That's what that implies. Let me just allow that, let me feel that, let me be with that. And there's sort of this simultaneous motion that happens when we acknowledge the seeking energy. It simultaneously opens us up for guidance. And that's a deep prayer that I just want to share for all of us at this time, to hold so much patience and forgiveness for ourselves and for one another, to start again, and to really catch where we might be in either denial and avoidance or too much control. And to direct that, to learn, to start over again in our starting over again. Everything gets to be a start now kind of experience, which is so beautiful. Okay. So those are some insights for this Vesta square in the nodes. I want to remind everyone that I'm currently teaching a retrograde class series. We started with Uranus a couple weeks ago, and we have Saturn coming up in a couple weeks. This is when Saturn stations retrograde. Our next class after that will be when Mercury stations direct. So you can check it out. I'll link this below, and you can sign up anytime. And for those who are already practiced in astrology, whether you've studied with me or another teacher of the evolutionary astrology lineage, or if you studied very deeply on your own, I'm going to be teaching the part 2 of my training course, my training series. This is a chart interpretation course, which begins May 23rd, which I've just noticed now is actually, I forgot what May 23rd was. It was at the eclipse. Was that when Vesta squares the node? I think that's when Vesta squares the nodes. I wasn't thinking that when I set that date. So I'm very selective in accepting new students. This is part 2. So the Essentials course was part 1. But if you fall into the categories of someone who's already been very practiced in beginner's evolutionary astrology material with me or someone else, or extensively with yourself, you can fill out an application So I'll link to that website below so you can check it out and fill out the application. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Much love to all.